Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. I'm your host, Joel Harrison. In this podcast, we discuss all matters relating to trust and influence, as the name would suggest, in B2B marketing, which is a very broad set of topics relating to the changing and generally dynamic status of B2B marketing industry, and lots of topics that come out. And today's topic is humour. And my guest for today's podcast is someone who is already very well known and highly respected as a copywriter and marketer in B2B marketing circles, but in recent months has created something of a cult following on social media due to her use of humour in posts exploring the idiosyncrasies, oddities, and sometimes downright idiocy of the B2B marketing world. Now, we all understand that the power and impact of humour to engage and convince audiences, and yet it's a tool that's still surprisingly rarely used in B2B, or at least used effectively. So to discuss the role of humour in marketing, her tentative forays into the world of stand-up, and the importance of human-centric copy in a seemingly AI-obsessed world, I'm delighted to welcome Heather Barnett to this podcast. Heather, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very
great
pleased to be here.
Well, it's lovely to see you. I see a lot of you on LinkedIn and your great posts, so I thought let's get her in and we can talk through what she's doing and why she's doing it, which is great fun. So let's just set the scene a little bit. Start by talking about who you are and what you do. Is the best description, title for you, freelance copywriter, or is there something more grandiose and highfalutin that you prefer?
I write marketing collateral, so I think freelance. I'm self-employed, so freelance works. Copywriter. You could say I'm a content writer. There's some kind of debate over, copywriters. Does that sound more like advertising, kind of creative concepts type stuff? I tend to write more long-form pieces like reports and award entries and case studies and things like that. But I think freelance copywriter gets across to most people what I do.
Okay, you don't sort of call yourself a content guru or anything like that.
I don't, although I have to say, actually, after a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I have added and content creator to my LinkedIn profile, which it does make me cringe. It's like, as we discussed at the time, I was kind of like, oh God. But then part of me is thinking, well, a lot of what I do now, the videos do lead to a lot of opportunities, and I am creating content. I can't think of a better way to describe it at the moment. So that's what I've got.
I applaud you for doing that. I mean, I do. Depending on what mood I'm in, when I ask what I do sometimes use the word influence, and I feel myself being sick in my mouth whilst I'm doing it. But at the same time, I feel it probably helps describe what I'm trying to do. So yeah. I recognise, I feel your pain, but I applaud you for taking that step. So that's what you are right now. How long? I mean, I know your story, but let's tell the audience about how long you've done this for. What's your background, and why did you decide to become a lone ranger, as it were? I suppose.
That as well now. Well, I've worked in B2B marketing most of my career, so about 20 years, client side and agency side. And I got into marketing because I kind of felt like, right, I probably need to do an office job. But if I'm going to have to do an office job, I want to do the most creative one I can think of. And that was marketing. Through my career, I've kind of realized that the further you go in an organization or the more senior you get, the less you do of the actual doing and the stuff that you maybe got in there in the first place to do. So I got to a point of thinking, really, all I want to be doing is the writing. So let's see if I could make a go of, just jumping out into the unknown and doing that. And that's what I did 3 years ago. And I'm really glad I did. It works. Not everyone, this freelance isn't for everyone, but I really, really enjoy it. I like the autonomy. I like the variety of clients. And that is purely what I do now. It's just the content lone ranging, as I'm now going to call it. Thank you very much.
There we go. We're spinning off new titles with every single moment, aren't we?
Brilliant.
It's great. And tell us about the clients you work for. Is it anybody in B2B, or do you tend to gravitate towards tech or anything like that?
I have more tech clients, but that's because I worked in tech for a long time. So my network involves a lot of people who've then gone on to different B2B tech agencies or work at tech firms. But I do also work with people in things like manufacturing, financial services. It's anything that has a complex proposition. It doesn't really matter to me what it is. It's more the problem they have is that they need to take something very complex and make it easy to understand and entertaining. So it doesn't really matter what it is.
Okay, all right. That sounds very, very familiar. So as well as someone who is generally very savvy about B2B marketing, it was your LinkedIn videos that prompted me to invite you on the podcast. And listeners, if you've not seen these, they're effectively short vignettes where Heather explores common marketing challenges or kind of debunks, satirizes.
Yeah.
Tell me what the right word is.
That's right.
In very different styles, kind of, such as including as a newscaster or someone leading a brainstorming session. Tell me where all this came from. How did you start doing this, and what were you trying to achieve?
So I would say I realised that I don't advertise what I do anywhere apart from promoting myself on LinkedIn. So as a freelancer, you're obviously always wanting to get a kind of pipeline of opportunities coming through like you would with any organization, and a lot of my work comes from referrals or from LinkedIn. So I knew I had to be posting something on LinkedIn, and when I first went freelance, I tried a few different types of things, some more straight and serious and some a bit funnier. And in my kind of other parallel life, I write novels, and for that I had done a couple of videos to promote the novels when they came out on Twitter, because I was with a very small publisher, there wasn't really much marketing budget, and they'd gone down really well. So there was part of my brain kind of going, could I cross this thing over? Is there something I could do in B2B that would also work? It felt a bit scarier in doing it on LinkedIn, because it's kind of like, it is your professional persona. So for whatever reason, I kind of thought, well, I would need to promote myself. I think it was about a year ago I did the first one. I did a couple and they went really well. I was kind of like, okay, this is good. Then I kind of slacked off, as you do, for a few months and didn't do any because I was just so busy. And then I started thinking, no, I need to do this regularly. So from last October, I've been doing one a week, which to me feels huge. I know that some people post videos every day, but like it's quite a lot to kind of think of it, kind of work the script out in my head, get it recorded or whatever. But yeah, that was why really, it was just to promote myself. And then it's turned into a thing where it's kind of spun off as an avenue on its, in its own account. And I really enjoy it. I've always been someone who, I think, I look for the funny side in a situation, and I've done little bits of comedy here and there. So it kind of made sense to bring that in to the day job.
It kind of like, it feels like there's some joy in you. It was a means to an end, and it's turned into something that is just joyous. And actually, I feel like there's a bit of a community corralling around your posts. Like I think there's people I recognise who are liking and commenting, and I know some of those people, and everyone's kind of getting a bit of joy. So it's a lovely joyous thing. It's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, and probably because I do really enjoy it. I make myself laugh doing the videos, not while I'm recording them, obviously, but like, it is really cringy. I'll just be like, oh, this is a funny one. I love this one. Because I like making comedy, and I love getting the feedback from people. It's a really nice feeling to kind of think I've made someone laugh. They've got it. It's really satisfying.
Okay, because that's what we always want as writers. We want someone to resonate with what we're
Yeah.
saying. And if you can do that, humour is a brilliant way of, particularly versus a conference where you're talking to people. And if you're in the UK, American or North American, Australian listeners probably get a reaction from their audience. But Heather, about you, I get most people just sit there stony faced, and you don't. At the end, they're probably rapturously, but you're never quite sure in the middle if they're actually getting any of it.
Well,
So
they'll come up afterwards and go, I really liked that. And you're like, well, why didn't you tell your face?
give me some indication along the way. Each one of these videos, as far as I can see, gets rave reviews, and you get great likes and shares. What's it done for, you said it was initially about business, to become business and maybe just a bit more kind of general community building and fun. What's it done for your social status, or you could say in a horrible word, fame? What is it that your kind of humour could do that other things couldn't do for you?
It's definitely made a difference. And as you say, like I'll let you in on a secret. Not all the videos do really well. I sometimes put one out and it'll bomb, and I'll never know, because I could do one where I think is really funny, and for whatever reason the hook doesn't appeal to people, or the algorithm isn't showing it to people, or whatever it is, and so that one won't fly. And then another one that I've kind of dashed off at the last minute will rocket. And I'll just be like, I don't get this, but fine. All you can do is keep putting them out and what you think is funny and see what happens. But I think it has made me realise that people want to laugh. The reason why they're resonating is because we all, hopefully we all have a sense of humor. Most of us have a sense of humor. We don't always feel comfortable sharing it at work, maybe, but people are scanning LinkedIn. They're saying a lot of very serious, earnest stuff, and they really like being able to go, oh God, thank you. Yeah, like, this is something that just is a little bit. It's not trying to be serious, but it is. You kind of feel like you're in the club, I think, because you have to understand a little bit about B2B or about marketing probably to get the joke most of the time. You might get some of it if you weren't a marketer, but it's aimed, it's a kind of esoteric thing, I suppose. And so yeah, that does seem to resonate with people. And also what's interesting is, I think, and if you are someone who's starting to post on LinkedIn and you're not getting that many likes or comments or whatever, what I would say is I get people coming up to me, say at an event, or messaging me and saying, I love your content, I really love your videos, I share them with other people, I can't like them because my boss might see, or do you know what I mean, or something like that, because they're genuinely, I'm taking the mickey out of things that their boss is telling them to do, or something like that. So it's there's a whole, there's like dark social, or you see the main people who are actually outwardly brave enough to like it, and then there are the other people that's, I'm not saying that probably doesn't apply to a lot of people posting on LinkedIn, but all I mean is people are probably seeing and enjoying your content that you have no idea about.
I like the idea of a dark LinkedIn, though. I mean, it's darker than it already is, but a place where people will just go and, I don't know, just do
Really
nefarious
black
things.
humor and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but even thing about LinkedIn, I've become quite a critic, but at the same time, I'm a quite heavy user. So, but even when people are they're often saying very positive things, but it's done in a quite a po-faced, and almost sometimes the
Mm,
positive stuff's a bit nauseating at the same time. Everyone's
yeah.
like, "Oh, it's amazing what I've done, and my team are amazing." And a bit, whereas you're
Humble brag.
well, yeah, humble brag. Yeah, you're subverting all of that in a really in a wry way, but it's ultimately quite a gentle way. And I think, it's a voice that's very rare, certainly in my feed. So
Good.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I offer you a chance to comment there. Being British, it's kind of hard to do that. You've been so well complimented. Is humour something you've always done then? Because you said that you were in marketing, you want to do something creative. And I remember some of the stuff you did at TMP when there was a particular version of one of the conferences you did called Ignite, and I was kept saying to all the speakers, do something fun. Everyone's bored of webinars as in COVID. Just try. And you need something like black magic, and you had you and your colleague wearing black hats and doing. Was that? Did I remember that right, or have I made
We
that
had
up?
a Victorian, we had an actor that we hired in, and we called him Dr. Marketing, and he was a quack doctor, and he was handing out tins of lozenges that were called MQLs. So yeah, that worked really well. It was, and so David Van Schaik, who was the CMO, went and did the speech, and we pretended that we got Dr. Marketing to come in and heckle him, and then we pulled him. It was this whole kind of like ridiculous scene going on, but people remembered it. Like, a couple of years later, they were saying, "Oh, you were the guys with the." I don't know if they remembered why they remembered it, but they remembered us because we were the guy, the weirdos with the Victorian quack doctor. So yeah, we did that TMP, and we did like a recruitment campaign where it was a question we'd asked like 8 people at TMP to ask someone in their family what they think they did for a living. So say to their 5-year-old son, what do you think daddy does when he goes into the office? And then we did it as a web page where it was a multiple choice quiz, and you had the real answer and 2 other answers, and people could go through. And that went down so well because, nobody knows what B2B marketers do, and it's hilarious finding out that what somebody's 5-year-old son thinks they go and it was something like type in Google or something. That's what they thought he did all day. So I've done a little bit of where I could. I did it in the day job beforehand, but as I said, it is something. I've done a stand-up comedy course, I've done a sketch comedy course, I've done improv. There's always been something I've wanted an outlet for that kind of comedic urge, so it's definitely always been there.
And I want to ask you about it in a minute, but I want to just sort of get through the kind of deal with you have injected humour in your work. And so I guess as time's gone on, you found the confidence and had the latitude. And obviously now as a freelancer, you've got as a lone ranger, you've got the opportunity to do whatever the hell you want to do, right? So
Yeah,
I guess that's probably what holds some people back.
yeah.
It's the confidence and the latitude to do something creative and different.
I think that's completely understandable as well because all I have to worry about now is making myself look like an idiot, But whereas if you're in a company, you're worried about making yourself look like an idiot. You're worried, is it going to impact your career within that company? Are you going to make the company look stupid? Will other people want to sign it off? Will they take you seriously? There's all these kind of things which actually, to be fair, I think a lot of them are barriers that we build up in our heads that if you can break them down, it's incredibly freeing and you could do some amazing stuff. But I completely understand, I would have been very similar that you just have a freedom to do more stuff with your freelance or self-employed.
I think what my understanding of behavioural science, behavioural economics from Rory Sutherland downward, but certainly other agencies focused on it for a while there, was that everything that we do as B2B marketers is all about not getting sacked.
Mm.
And, hey, I've got a great jokey campaign, that could be on the runway to getting sacked if it doesn't work, even if there's not funny and not working.
It's such a paradox, isn't it? Because I think playing it safe is one of the biggest risks you can take actually in marketing. I think we probably all recognize that rationally. There's all the brilliant stuff that Adam Morgan and System One have done about the cost of dull, showing that you have to spend 10 times more on a boring advert to get the same results as you do for an interesting creative advert, because you're having to put it out on so many more channels and kind of try and get people to remember it, which they don't because it's boring. So you're just throwing money down the drain if you're putting something bland and safe out there. But for whatever reason, although we know that you have to stand out, and lots of people say, hey, you have to stand out, when it comes down to it on a personal level, it's like, oh God, but I don't want to stand out because what if it goes wrong? Because that's real, there's a risk that people, it won't fly, or I do think the perceived risks are probably, I think people overstate them. I don't think things would be that bad actually if you did a funny campaign and it didn't land or whatever. You'd be okay, you'd survive. But I think it's very easy for people to go, well, I just won't bother. I'll just, let's just put another leveraging workplace streamlining efficiencies piece of content out there and not worry that nobody's reading it because it's so dull and like, nobody's actually noticed it. So yeah, I think there is a real weird thing going on there that people are playing it safe and they are actually taking a massive risk for their company in doing that because they're not helping them promote themselves.
So how receptive would you say? No, actually, I was going to ask you about using Humour with clients. Do you use Humour with your current clients, or is it worth asking this question, or is this like, let's ask it and see what happens? So, how receptive would you say clients are, buyers of creative copywriting services, to use of Humour within a project, and why is that?
It's interesting because I think, as I say, I've got quite a few projects come in through people seeing my videos because they have the same sense of humour and they really like the fact that they can see that I understand B2B buyers, but also the fact that there's the kind of humour angle to it is what attracts them to it. But I don't tend to get brought in to write funny stuff. So unless it's kind of producing a video, I've done some kind of sponsored videos for people, and I've done some performances, and that's funny stuff. But on the whole, they find me because of the humour, but then I write just straight, B2B marketing copy. And I don't think that's because the clients are necessarily anti-humour. Maybe it's just because there haven't been the opportunities in whatever I'm working on. I'm working on websites or something with somebody, in which case there's probably not a lot of, depending on what it is, there's not a lot of chance to make it particularly funny. But I do think there's still a bit of that stuff at play that we were talking about in terms of you personally might like humour, but it's still a much bigger deal to then sell it internally to a whole organisation and start using it in what you're producing.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's impossible to use humour in the context of the stuff you're writing. It's just that that's not deemed as applicable or desirable in the moment of that with that client.
Yeah, or maybe it just doesn't cross people's minds because it's so unusual still.
Yeah,
In many ways.
Well, I guess, because this kind of leads on to the next point, really, which is that, I generally am not a fan of the word consumerization. I will have to grudgingly accept that it does describe what's kind of going on. I mean, do you think that buyers are more receptive now, or even expective of content that maybe not humorous, but is certainly less business speak orientated, is a bit more consumer like in its shape and its form? And I'm getting this from some of the sessions I've seen you do recently.
Yeah, I think it's really complicated actually, because I think in B2B, some of that language is almost like a code. So I think people feel like they have to say they're leveraging something rather than using something, or elevating rather than improving, because it's kind of a code to say, we understand that, we are professional. We understand that this is a business to business scenario. This is different to B2C. So it's almost like showing that you're in the club kind of thing. So people use it as a kind of password or something. So it becomes, I don't know, it's a bit like Emperor's New Clothes, that then everyone thinks that you have to speak like that, and they're all speaking to each other like that, even though if you do then cut through with something that's just very simplistic, everyone's like, oh god, thank god, okay, that's what you meant, because half the time nobody knows what anyone's talking about because they've kind of glossed it up so much and kind of hidden it on all this ridiculous jargon. So I think, I don't know, there's a weird thing of like people at home and then people in their B2B jobs, where at home they would laugh their heads off at some ridiculous language being used, but for some reason they open that virtual office door, sit down at their desk, and they're elevating away again, because that's just I don't know, it's just really hard for people to break out of it. So I don't think I could say across the board everyone is expecting kind of more simple language. I think people really find it refreshing and they enjoy it on the whole when they get it, but they don't get it very much in B2B still, I would say.
I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to, because this goes down to the motion of kind of how do you influence people, and you get under their skins, and you make them laugh. They surrender some of their objections and their kind of work face, and they become more human like. And then when you feel brands feel relatable, there's so many benefits, it seems. But at the same time, I completely recognise what you're saying. I was actually listening to a podcast with Armando Iannucci and Marina Hyde about political language, and they were talking about how most politicians seem to have defaulted to starting using words like delivery, which means nothing to most people, whereas the populists, just use a different set of language, and like them or hate them, they're much better communicators than the more technocratic ones. And I feel like there's a parallel kind of challenge in politics as there is in marketing, bizarrely.
Yeah, and it's a strange kind of snobbery as well. I think it's almost like, oh, I have to show how clever and sophisticated I am by using these long words with multiple syllables, etc., etc. Whereas the opposite is true. It's very hard to make something simple and to communicate clearly to people. So actually, if you can do that, you're the one who's being clever and intelligent, and people appreciate that. So yeah, I think there's a sense of, I don't know, there's definitely a misplaced feeling that you need to overcomplicate things for some reason, and that does persist.
So we're all doing this little dance around around pseudo-technical language
Yeah.
that is over more complicated than it needs to be. And you know, I mean, I feel personally that we're going in. The things are getting better, but probably quite slowly. And it
Thank
is
God, because
probably,
what would I do my videos on, Joel, if everything was suddenly solved? Be out of a job.
well, that's true. If for your benefits and no one else, we need to keep using technical language.
If you could.
It feels like it's probably going to take a generational shift to really make that change. And I feel people get ultimately what happens. People get indoctrinated, as you say, into the ways of corporate speak and corporate expectations. And so, yeah, I'm going to be the. Go on. No, you go.
It just means that people who do recognize what they're doing and can get out of it and are refreshingly simplistic really benefit. It just means that for those people there's a great opportunity to stand out.
Well, I hope that we that, stuff like your videos and other actors in this space can gradually make that kind of message land over time. But when you mentioned stand up earlier on, and you started bringing this kind of approach beyond the digital realm into the real world with speaking sessions at events and even stand up comedy gigs. Was that always an aspiration or something that emerged, an opportunity as a consequence of this stuff that you're doing? Which came first, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, I didn't start doing the videos thinking, oh, this might lead to a kind of live performance. But it was more like, there's been no kind of strategic plan behind it. It's just evolved. And the more I've done and the more people have reacted to it, the more I've thought, oh, great. And then the more opportunities that have come along. And I've kind of said yes to various things that they've come along. And it's been great because, as I say, I have always had that kind of performance element to me. So yeah, I'm really happy that that is happening, but it's not something where it's like a grand plan of like 20 years ago, I get this B2B marketing, so eventually I can do some stand-up comedy.
Yeah, that would
Quite
be.
a convoluted route, I think.
It would be. It would be particularly Machiavellian as well if you could see that level in the future. But I mean, has it been mutually reciprocal? Have you learned some stuff from the comedy that you perhaps wouldn't have understood if you hadn't had to stand in front of people and deliver it?
Yes, it's quite different doing. So the videos are like a minute long. It's just a broadcast kind of medium, whereas the stand-up, it tends to be 15 to 20 minutes, the ones I've done so far. And you're obviously trying to get people engaged because the more people feel involved in it, the funnier they find it, and the more the more energy there is in the room. So it's definitely a different discipline. So I'm kind of learning that and honing what I do as I go along. But interesting as well, what I thought you were going to ask then, and what is also interesting is I think my marketing benefited from the comedy work that I've done. So the courses that I've done in the past, things around specificity. So something is really funny if it's specific. So like somebody falling over on a piece of fruit isn't funny, but somebody slipping on a banana skin is, quite a bad example. But you know what I mean? Like you have to make something very specific for it to be funny and for it to resonate. And it's the same in marketing, I think. If the more, and it kind of comes back to what we're talking about jargon, the more you kind of like lift things up to a very generic high level, the less people understand what you're talking about. The more detailed and specific and personal and relevant you can be, the more likely you are to get someone going, yeah, I get that. That's how I feel about it as well. So I think that's the same in marketing and comedy.
Okay, so it just feel like ultimately the two are communications, right? Both of them. One is specifically aimed to. It's all about humour. The other one's this humour is a tool to get where you want to get to. So, I mean, but you've done these four. Your videos. I mean, I didn't realise you did one a week. I wasn't aware of the
It's crazy, isn't
schedule.
it?
I'm staggered, and impressed, and sympathetic, and
Horrified.
horrified. That's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for. In equal measure about and that's the expression "creating a rod for your own back" just popped into my head there. I don't know where that came from, but
We don't think about that.
but that's what you're committed to. That's what you're doing. But you're also doing. You're gradually, gently pushing into that kind of speaking comedy kind of world. Am I right there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so so the two things are potentially mutually reinforcing to a degree. Do we expect to see you on live at the Apollo anytime soon, or is the comedy's going to become very much a side hustle, should we say?
I think you know the answer to that question, Joel.
Got to ask.
Now, I mean, I suppose to be fair, what Live at Apollo does need is more jokes about ABM. So if the producers are watching, I am here and I'm available. But no, I think at the moment I really like the mixture I've got of the copywriting, doing the videos, doing some live events. It's a nice mixture of stuff. And yeah, I love doing the comedy. So any opportunities I get to do, I will definitely take. But it's not, again, maybe I should have a grand plan, but I don't.
I'm actually compiling a list of marketers who have done comedy or are aspiring to do it, and it's building up now. I wouldn't say it's
Yeah.
quite the both fingers of both hands yet, but it's probably just the intention is obviously to have a B2B marketing stand-up night where everyone's a practicing
Perfect.
marketer. There we go.
Yeah.
That's at that point I can retire happy, knowing that I've achieved everything I would need to. Um, but I mean, the more serious point really is about about the use of humour in B2B marketing, and and its power to convince people, because we all remember campaigns that are funny vastly more than we remember ones that are emotional in other ways. And I think I feel like we should be aspiring. It feels trite to say there should be more humour in B2B, but at the same time, it would be a better and more fun environment if there could be. What would you say to marketers who are aspiring to do this, who wanted to use comedy more, but for whatever reason didn't feel they were able to?
I think I would say, first of all, I get it. Like I was saying earlier, I do understand it's not an easy thing to say, right, we're going to start doing some comedy now. So it's understandable to feel cautious about it. But I think also, as we were saying earlier, you do need to stand out, and humor is it's a really good, it's not the only way, but it is a really good way to stand out. So if you think it might work for your organization, then yeah, think about what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve that it might hit. So is it that you're just trying to differentiate a bit from competitors who all look the same? Is it that your content at the moment is just, it's not generating any engagement because it's just, it's just going under everyone's radar, and therefore might humor work? And maybe just take a self-contained piece. So like I mentioned, some of the stuff that we did at my old agency, if you're attending an event and it's, do the event comms around it and the collateral on the event and stuff, and have that as a kind of funny campaign, and make sure you know what you're trying to achieve, so that you can then evidence back to whoever you need to convince internally, or whatever it is that you need to do to be more confident to roll that out more broadly. Pick something like that, pick a recruitment campaign, pick something where you're not worried that you're kind of going from zero to kind of digital out of home billboards. I think that's a good way to start, is almost kind of pilot humor. And just enjoy it. It's kind of like, isn't it nice to go into work and do something that's fun and that makes you laugh, and maybe makes your heart race a little bit, because it's kind of like, oh God, what's going to happen, rather than going, oh, I'll just go in and just do the same thing as I did yesterday and the day before
Or the
that.
same thing the
What's the
person next
point?
stand is doing, for example.
Yeah.
I think that's very wise words, but I feel like, of course, you have to test and start small. But then again, I think what your example says, and it's an example that's repeated in so many instances across B2B marketing, is actually the first time you do something, you probably won't do a brilliant job at it. It's the kind of thing that you need to build and practice and
Yeah.
build essentially build a
Experiment
muscle
with it.
to do. Yeah, experiment and understand that sometimes you'll fail as well. And the failure doesn't have to mean like it's a catastrophe. It just means it didn't quite work as well as it did do. I mean, the thing that I always come back to is that I was asked recently I did some recording for a PR agency, Rosherman. They said, "What's the best B2B campaign you remember?" And the one that always just pops into my head is the Jean-Claude Van Damme on the trucks going
Yeah.
backwards. And it's like, that's just amazing. That wasn't funny. There was various parodies that were funny, but that wasn't funny in itself. It was just inspiring. It was just inspirational and awesome. But I understood the story about how they got to that. And there wasn't just a starting from zero going to Jean-Claude Van Damme on these trucks. Actually, it was the end of a really long line of content acting they did, where they got, each time they did something, they got bigger and bolder
Right.
and
Yeah.
thought bigger. And the best stuff that we do is actually often, I just find so often it comes from a gradual process of development and commitment, rather than just like one and done, and you're immediately at the nth degree. It's just unreasonable to expect that.
Yeah, but I think you have to be in an organisation that will support that. That's the thing. So there's another thing to think. If you're thinking about doing this, are you in the right place? Because some businesses are just, just accept it. They are never going to let you do funny stuff. So if you're not there, then unfortunately there's no point in trying it. But if you are in a place that will support you and that understands the importance of taking a risk, then yeah, as you say, it's kind of like, then be free to take a risk. And the whole point of taking a risk is it could go wrong, and you have to be comfortable with that. And as you say, just keep trying until you've learned from the what you've done, and you've got to a point that it's starting to be successful. But again, I still would say that's more fun than just doing what you're already doing and carrying on, and how boring.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think about what was the least inappropriate B2B sector to use humour in. There's probably a whole genre around that, isn't there? Probably not for discussion here, but it was a big
I think like
interesting
legal, maybe, I don't know.
cybersecurity, something
Yeah.
like that. Particularly if you're M&S and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, but yeah, I wish more organisations used it, because it just is so powerful. So I'm really grateful to you on behalf of the whole industry for just showing us a bit of how it can be done, and
Thank
frankly
you.
enlightening our LinkedIn feeds to something which is fun and inspirational. And I think we all need to take the take the piss out of ourselves and the industry, because there's lots there to take the piss out of them. Everyone's very worthy and kind of
People really want to, Joel. That's the thing as well. It's kind of like, it's not like I'm putting stuff out there and everyone's going like, what the hell are you talking about? People are like, yes, absolutely. We know this, we're laughing because we do it and it's stupid, and I've done it, it's not like I'm from my ivory tower. It's like I'm taking the piss out of stuff that I have probably done in the past, or that, in organizations that I've worked in or whatever. It's like, that's why it's funny, is because we know the kind of like the paradox of like thinking, why are we doing this, but still doing it. And people are very happy to laugh at that. It's great.
Yeah, I exactly right. We need reasons to laugh in these kind of post days. So yeah, so I really enjoy them, and I really hope you keep them going. I think that's probably all my questions now today. So thank you so much for taking time to be on this. And like I say, I really enjoy your stuff, and please keep it going. And if you're not following Heather already, I don't suppose you can remember your LinkedIn handle off by heart, can you?
I think I'm the only Heather Barnett that's a freelance copywriter, so hopefully,
There we go. Yeah,
fine.
you'll find it pretty quickly, I'm sure, if you go on LinkedIn and search for Heather Barnett. So Heather, thanks so much for being part of this today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, you're absolutely welcome. And if you enjoyed this conversation, there's lots more as part of this podcast, Trust and Influence in B2B. We're focusing on all matters related to how you influence people, how you generate trust, and trust and influence is definitely both through things around humour and things like thought leadership and influencer marketing and advocacy. Those are 3 topic areas. So please remember to give us a like and subscribe. I'd love to get you signed up to receive more of these podcasts. But thanks for joining us for today, and I hope you can join us again very, very soon. Thank you.